Welcome to part 2 of our interesting story. If you haven't watched part 1, try to do so. I will attach it at the end. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and comment. Now let's dive into part 2. The silence didn't leave after the truth. It stayed thick, present, uncomfortable in a way that made every movement feel louder than it should have been. Virginia Scott stood near the glass wall of the penthouse. The city stretched endlessly before her in bright, unforgiving clarity. Sunlight poured into the room, reflecting off polished marble and smooth surfaces like nothing had changed. But everything had. She wasn't pretending anymore. And somehow, that felt more dangerous than the lie ever had. Behind her, Adrian Voss hadn't moved much since she told him the truth. He stood near the center of the room, posture relaxed, hands loosely at his sides, but nothing about him was casual. He was watching, not the way he had before, not searching for flaws in her act. Now he was studying something real, and real was harder to predict. Virginia felt it without turning. The weight of his attention had changed. "You walk differently," Adrian said finally. His voice was calm. Virginia didn't turn immediately. She let the silence breathe for a second longer before answering. "I don't have to pretend anymore." A pause. Then she turned. Slowly. Her eyes met his directly for the first time without disguise. Adrian noticed. Of course he did. His gaze sharpened slightly. "You adjusted your stride when you thought I wasn't looking," he continued. "Shortened your step. Shifted your weight." Virginia held his gaze. "I had to be consistent." Adrian took a slow step closer. "Consistency isn't survival," he said. "Precision is." A subtle correction, but it carried meaning. Virginia didn't respond immediately. There was no persona to hide behind. Only intention. "You're analyzing me again," she said quietly. Adrian stopped a few feet away. "I never stopped." He had always been watching. She just hadn't realized how closely. Silence stretched again. But this time, it wasn't filled with tension alone. There was something else now. Virginia shifted slightly, her posture no longer softened or guarded by the blind act. She stood straight. Adrian noticed that too. "You're different," he said. Virginia let out a faint breath. "No, I'm the same. You're just seeing it now." That line lingered. Adrian's expression didn't change, but something behind it moved. Recognition, or maybe something closer to intrigue. He turned slightly, walking past her toward the window. "You built a version of yourself that could survive under observation," he said. "That's not easy to do." Virginia watched him now, no longer needing to calculate every movement. It was necessary. Adrian glanced back at her briefly. "That's not what I said." It was impressive. The word hung in the air. Unexpected. Virginia didn't respond right away, because admiration wasn't what she had prepared for. "You should be more concerned than impressed," she said. Adrian turned fully toward her now. "I am." A pause. "Just not for the reasons you think." That shifted something again. The dynamic wasn't settling. It was evolving. Virginia stepped slightly closer. Not cautiously, not carefully. Naturally. "You don't know anything about me," she said. Adrian's gaze held steady. "I know enough." Silence. Then he added, "You don't run unless the alternative is worse." Virginia's expression tightened slightly. He had reached closer to the truth than anyone else had, and he hadn't even asked the full story. "You let them speak," she said. "Back there." A pause. "You listened." Adrian didn't deny it. "I listened to everything." Another step closer. Now the distance between them was minimal, controlled, intentional, which means you heard them say, "I was lying to you," Virginia continued. Adrian's voice lowered. "I did, a beat, and you stayed anyway." There it was. The question beneath everything. Why? Adrian studied her face again, not searching for deception, searching for something else entirely. "I didn't stay for the lie," he said. A pause. "I stayed for what it meant." Virginia frowned slightly. "And what did it mean?" Adrian didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped past her again, creating space, but not distance. "It meant you were willing to construct an entire identity to avoid going back," he said. A beat. "That kind of decision doesn't come from fear alone." Virginia's breath slowed. Because he was right again. And that was becoming a problem. Adrian turned back toward her. "It comes from necessity." Silence. Heavy. Real. Virginia didn't look away. Not this time. Because there was nothing left to hide. So what happens now? She asked. The question wasn't weak. It wasn't uncertain. It was direct. Adrian held her gaze. Longer than before. Then finally. That depends. A pause. On whether you're a risk or an asset. The words were controlled. Measured. But they changed everything. Virginia's posture didn't shift. But internally, something tightened. This wasn't about exposure anymore. It was about position. And she was standing in the middle of it without protection. I'm not here to be either, she said. Adrian's expression remained unreadable. You already are. Silence again. But sharper now. More defined. Virginia exhaled slowly. Then maybe you should let me leave. The room stilled. Completely. Adrian didn't move. Didn't react immediately. But the air shifted. Decisively. No. One word. Final. Virginia's gaze hardened slightly. That wasn't a request. Adrian took one step closer again. Not aggressive. Not forceful. Just absolute. I know. A pause. Then quieter. And that wasn't an option. The weight of it settled instantly. Not anger. Not control alone. Something deeper. Something more deliberate. Virginia studied him now, understanding forming piece by piece. You're not keeping me here because you think I'm dangerous, she said. Adrian didn't respond, which was answer enough. She took a slow breath, then finished the thought herself. You're keeping me because you don't understand me. Adrian's eyes held hers. A pause. Then lower. But I will. Silence fell again. But this time it wasn't empty. It was charged. Because the rules had changed. The lie was gone. But the tension had only grown sharper. And standing there in the open, without disguise, without protection, Virginia realized something she hadn't expected. The truth hadn't made her safer. It had made her more valuable. And far more dangerous. Because now that she was exposed, she was more dangerous than ever. The next morning didn't feel like a new day. It felt like a continuation. Of pressure. Of presence. Of something watching, without hiding anymore. Sunlight filled the penthouse early, pouring through the glass walls in clean, golden layers that left no corner untouched. Everything looked the same. Polished floors, quiet luxury, controlled silence. But Virginia Scott noticed the difference immediately. It wasn't the space. It was him. Adrian Voss was no longer pretending not to watch her. He had stopped hiding it. Virginia stood near the kitchen island, her movements natural now, unfiltered by the blind act. She reached for a glass, filled it with water, and took a slow sip. And across the room, Adrian watched, not from distance, not in passing, directly. His posture was relaxed, leaning slightly against the wall, one hand resting in his pocket, the other holding nothing at all. But his eyes, they didn't move away. Virginia set the glass down carefully. You've been standing there for a while, she said without turning. I know. She turned slightly, just enough to meet his gaze. You're not even pretending anymore. Adrian's expression didn't shift. There's no reason to. That answer landed heavier than expected, because it meant something simple. The game had changed. Virginia studied him for a moment. You used to test me, she said. A beat. Now you're just watching. Adrian pushed off the wall slowly and stepped forward. Testing has limits, he replied. Observation doesn't. He stopped a few feet away. Virginia crossed her arms lightly. Not defensive, just aware. And what exactly are you observing? She asked. Adrian didn't answer immediately. Instead, his gaze moved subtle, precise. Her posture, her stance, the way she held tension in her shoulders, the way she breathed, everything. You, he said finally. A simple answer, but not a shallow one. Virginia held his gaze. That's not specific. Adrian tilted his head slightly. It doesn't need to be. Virginia turned away first, walking toward the window, the city unfolding beneath her in bright clarity. She could feel it even without looking. His attention followed her, like something had locked onto her and refused to let go. You're trying to understand me, she said, or control me. Adrian's voice came from behind her. Those aren't the same thing. Virginia glanced back slightly. They overlap more than you think. Adrian didn't argue, which told her enough. He stepped closer again, stopping beside her this time, both of them facing the glass. For a moment, neither spoke. Then, "You don't move like someone who's been sheltered," he said. Virginia's eyes narrowed slightly. "I wasn't." Adrian nodded once, as if confirming something already suspected. "You adapt quickly," he continued. "Faster than most people in unfamiliar environments." A beat. "You didn't ask for help this morning." Virginia exhaled slowly. "I didn't need it. That's the point." Virginia turned fully toward him. "You're building a profile," she said. Adrian met her gaze. "I already did. Now I'm refining it." That shifted something inside her. Because this wasn't curiosity anymore. It was focus. Deep, intentional, and dangerously consistent. Virginia stepped away from the window, creating space. Not out of fear, out of awareness. "You're treating me like a case study," she said. Adrian didn't deny it. "Because you are one." The honesty in that response should have unsettled her more than it did. Instead, it clarified things. "You don't trust me," she said. Adrian's expression remained steady. "I don't need to. Trust isn't required for interest." That word, interest, it landed differently. Virginia caught it immediately. "You're interested in me." Adrian didn't respond right away, but the silence itself was confirmation. She watched him carefully now, just like he had done to her. "That's new," she said quietly. Adrian stepped closer again. The distance between them shortened, not abruptly, not forcefully. Gradually, deliberately. "It's evolving," he corrected. Virginia's breath slowed slightly, because she could feel it now, the shift. This wasn't suspicion anymore. It wasn't even control. It was something more complex, more unstable. "You're not trying to expose me anymore," she said. Adrian's voice lowered. "No." A beat. "Already did that." Silence. Then, "Now I'm trying to understand why." Virginia held his gaze. "And what happens when you figure it out?" Adrian didn't answer immediately. His eyes searched hers, not for lies, for patterns, for meaning. "For now," he said slowly, "you stay." Virginia's expression hardened slightly. "That sounds familiar." Adrian's tone didn't change. "It should." A pause. "But the reason is different now." That was the part she didn't like. Because reasons were harder to predict than rules. Virginia stepped back again, creating distance this time with intention. "You're watching everything I do," she said. Adrian nodded once. "Yes." No hesitation. No denial. Just truth. "And you're not even hiding it," she added. Another nod. "No." Virginia let out a quiet breath. "Why?" That question lingered longer than the others. Because this time, Adrian didn't answer immediately. He looked at her, really looked at her, as if measuring something beyond behavior, beyond strategy, beyond logic. Then finally, "Because you don't behave the way you should." A pause. "You don't react the way people expect." Another step closer. "You don't break under pressure." His voice lowered slightly. "And you don't explain yourself." Virginia's breath tightened subtly. Not fear, recognition. "Because everything he said was true." "And that bothers you?" she asked. Adrian shook his head slightly. "No." A beat. It held my attention. There it was. Clear, unfiltered, unavoidable. Virginia didn't move, didn't respond, because now she understood something she hadn't fully accepted before. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't casual. This wasn't passing curiosity. This was focus, sustained, deliberate, and growing. Adrian stepped back slightly, breaking the intensity, but not the connection. "For now," he said, "you stay where I can see you." Not a threat, not a command. Something else. Something closer to intention. Virginia watched him carefully. And for the first time, she wasn't trying to outmaneuver him. She was trying to understand what he was becoming. Because whatever this was, it wasn't over. It was just beginning. And somewhere between observation and control, Adrian Voss had crossed a line he hadn't defined yet. Because he had stopped testing her and started studying her life. The call didn't come with warning. It arrived quietly, but it changed everything. Virginia was standing near the window again. The city stretched wide beneath her, bright and indifferent when she felt it. Not a sound, not a movement, a shift, subtle, but unmistakable. Behind her, Adrian Voss had gone still, completely still. She turned slightly. He stood a few feet away, phone in hand, gaze lowered just enough to read, but not enough to disconnect from everything else around him. His expression didn't change, but something in his posture did, focused in a way that wasn't about her anymore. And that alone was enough to make Virginia's chest tighten. "Something's wrong," she said. Not a question. Adrian didn't respond immediately. He read whatever was on the screen once more, then locked it. When he looked up, his eyes found hers instantly. "They found you." The words landed without build-up. Virginia didn't move. But inside, everything shifted. "How?" she asked quietly. Adrian stepped forward, his presence filling the space again. But this time, it wasn't controlled curiosity. It was calculation under pressure. "You left a trail," he said. "People like them don't need much." Virginia's jaw tightened slightly. She already knew who he meant. Her family. And worse, the man she was supposed to marry. "They're not just looking," Adrian continued. "They've escalated it." Virginia's breath slowed, forcing control back into her body. Escalated how? Adrian held her gaze. Legal pressure. Private investigators. Influence. A beat. They filed a missing persons report that hit differently because it reframed everything. She wasn't just someone who ran. She was now someone being retrieved. "They're trying to force me back," she said. Adrian didn't correct her, which meant she was right. Virginia turned away slightly, her mind moving fast now, recalculating everything she thought she had escaped. "They can't prove anything," she said. "I'm not a minor. I wasn't taken." Adrian's voice cut through calmly. "They don't need to prove anything." She looked back at him. "They just need access," because she understood exactly what that meant. Influence that didn't ask permission. It moved, and it took. A knock sounded at the penthouse door. Sharp, controlled. Adrian didn't react with surprise, which meant he was expecting it. "Stay here," he said. Virginia didn't argue, but she didn't relax either. She watched as Adrian moved toward the door, his steps measured, his posture already shifting into something else entirely. Authority. When he opened it, two men stepped inside, both dressed in tailored suits, both carrying the same quiet tension of people who didn't arrive without reason. "Mr. Voss," one of them said. Adrian nodded once. "What is it?" The man handed over a slim file. "Legal notice," he said. "Filed this morning. They're requesting cooperation." Virginia didn't need to see the document to know what it contained. She could feel it, closing in. Adrian took the file and flipped it open briefly. His eyes moved quickly across the page, then slowed, just slightly. That was enough. "They're claiming she's mentally compromised," the second man added, using the blindness as leverage. Virginia's breath caught, not visibly, but internally it hit hard. They were rewriting her, turning her survival into weakness, into justification. Adrian closed the file. "And?" he asked. "They want access to the property," the first man said. "If necessary, with enforcement." Virginia stepped forward slightly now, unable to stay still any longer. "They can't just walk in here," she said. Adrian didn't look at her. "They could try," he replied. Then, finally, his gaze shifted to her. "They're not asking anymore," Virginia said quietly. Adrian held her gaze. "No, a beat. They're not." The weight of that settled fully now. This wasn't a search. It was a retrieval operation, and she was the target. Virginia's fingers curled slightly at her sides. "If they come here, they won't take you," Adrian said. He didn't raise his voice, didn't emphasize it, but the certainty in it was absolute. The men by the door exchanged a brief glance, because they heard it too. This wasn't a statement. It was a position. Adrian handed the file back without looking away from Virginia. "Handle it," he said. Both men nodded. "Of course." They turned and left just as quietly as they had entered. The door closed, and the silence returned. But it wasn't the same silence as before. This one carried weight. Impending movement. Virginia stepped closer. "You don't have to get involved in this," she said. Adrian's expression didn't change. "I already am." "That's not what I meant." A pause. "This is my problem." Adrian took one step toward her, closing the space again. "No," he said. A beat. "It's not." Virginia's eyes narrowed slightly. "You don't even know the full situation." Adrian's voice lowered. "I know enough." Another step closer. "And I know how this ends if I don't intervene. Silence. Then Virginia asked the question that mattered most. What do they want from you? Adrian didn't hesitate. They want me to cooperate. A pause. To give you back. The words settled heavily between them. Virginia's chest tightened. And will you? Adrian held her gaze. Unblinking. Unwavering. No. Simple. Final. But not easy, because that answer came with consequences. Serious ones. Virginia saw it in the way his posture remained steady, in the way his tone didn't shift, in the way he had already made the decision before she asked. They're not going to stop, she said. Adrian nodded once. I know. A pause. Neither am I. That was the moment everything changed again. Because now, this wasn't just her running anymore. This was conflict. Real. Structured. Inevitable. Virginia exhaled slowly, her mind catching up to the reality forming around her. They're going to come here, she said. Adrian's gaze remained steady. Yes. A beat. And when they do, silence stretched, because neither of them needed to finish the sentence. They both knew this wasn't going to stay controlled. It wasn't going to stay quiet. And it wasn't going to stay contained. Virginia's voice dropped slightly. They won't take no for an answer. Adrian's expression didn't change. They don't have to. A pause. They just have to try. The city outside remained bright, calm, unaware. But inside, something had shifted permanently. Because the past hadn't let go. It had caught up. And this time, it wasn't asking for her return. It was coming to take her. Because they weren't asking anymore. They were coming to take her back. The doors didn't lock. Not visibly. Not with sound. But Virginia felt it anyway. The moment Adrian Voss made his decision, something in the space shifted. The penthouse was still bright, still open, still filled with sunlight pouring through glass walls. But it no longer felt like a place you could walk out of freely. It felt contained. Virginia stood near the center of the room, her arms resting loosely at her sides, her posture calm, but her mind sharp, alert, measuring every detail. Across from her, Adrian adjusted his cufflinks with quiet precision, controlled, unbothered, as if the situation unfolding around them was already handled. You're increasing security, Virginia said. I guess. An observation. Adrian didn't look up immediately. Yes. One word. Simple. Final. Virginia's eyes narrowed slightly. That wasn't a suggestion. Now he looked at her. I don't take suggestions. A pause. Not when risk is involved. There was again. That word. Risk. Virginia stepped closer. And I'm the risk? Adrian held her gaze. You're the center of it. Silence stretched between them. But this silence wasn't uncertain. It was defined. Virginia folded her arms slightly. Not defensive, just grounding herself. You're making decisions for me, she said. Adrian's expression didn't change. I'm preventing other people from making them. That answer was too smooth, too controlled, and too dangerous. Virginia let out a quiet breath. That sounds like control. Adrian tilted his head slightly. It sounds like protection. A beat. It depends on perspective. Virginia looked at him carefully now, reevaluating, because the line between those two things was thinner than it should have been. A soft tone echoed through the room as Adrian's phone lit up again. He glanced at it briefly, then turned the screen toward her, not offering it, showing it. A legal notice. Formal, structured, cold. They've escalated again, he said. Virginia scanned it quickly. Her name, referenced like a case, not a person. They're pushing for a wellness intervention, Adrian continued, claiming you're not mentally stable enough to make your own decisions. Virginia's chest tightened slightly. They're trying to invalidate me. Yes. No hesitation. No sugarcoating. They're building a legal path to take control, he added. Virginia stepped back slightly, absorbing it. They can't prove that. They don't need to, Adrian replied. They just need to create doubt. Silence. Heavy. Calculated. Virginia turned away for a moment, her gaze drifting toward the city beyond the glass. Everything out there looked free, untouched, normal, but she wasn't part of that anymore. Not really. What happens if they succeed? She asked quietly. Adrian didn't hesitate. You get taken. The words landed clean, unemotional, but final. Virginia's fingers tightened slightly. And you? She asked. Adrian's voice lowered. I don't let that happen. A pause. But it means escalation. Virginia turned back to him. What kind of escalation? Adrian stepped closer. Not threatening. Just certain. Legal intervention, he said. Financial pressure. Counterclaims. A beat. I shut them down. Virginia studied him. Because this wasn't just influence. This was power. Structured. Calculated. And absolute when applied correctly. You're going to fight them, she said. Adrian's gaze didn't waver. I already am. Silence followed. But this time, it wasn't just tension. It was realization. Because this wasn't a temporary situation anymore. This was becoming a conflict with sides. And Adrian had already chosen his. You don't even know me, Virginia said. Adrian's expression remained steady. I know enough to know you don't belong back there. A pause. And I know what happens if I let you go. That line stayed in the air longer than expected. Virginia took a slow breath. And what happens if I stay? Adrian didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked past her, heading toward the window again. Repositioning. Thinking. Then, you stay under my protection. Virginia turned slightly, watching him. That still sounds like control. Adrian glanced back. It's structured protection. A beat. With boundaries. Virginia's eyes narrowed. Whose boundaries? Adrian held her gaze. Mine. There it was. Clear. Unfiltered. And impossible to ignore. Virginia stepped forward again, closing the distance. You're not just protecting me, she said. You're containing me. Adrian didn't deny it. Because he didn't need to. Containment prevents exposure, he replied. And exposure gets me taken, Virginia said. Yes. Silence. Sharp. Unavoidable. Virginia exhaled slowly. So I trade one form of control for another. Adrian's voice softened slightly, but not emotionally. Not the same kind. Virginia shook her head faintly. That depends on how it ends. Another pause. Adrian studied her again, not analyzing behavior this time. Something deeper. You can leave, he said. The words caught her off guard, but only for a second. Can I? She asked. Adrian didn't move. If you step outside that door right now, I won't stop you. A beat. But they will. The truth in that was undeniable. Virginia looked toward the door, then back at him, because she understood exactly what he meant. Freedom was still there. Technically. But it wasn't safe. And safety had a cost. You've made it so I don't have a real choice, she said. Adrian's gaze remained steady. I've made sure you have a chance. That line settled differently. Because it wasn't entirely wrong. But it wasn't entirely right either. Virginia stood there in the center of the room, sunlight surrounding her, clarity pressing in from every direction, and realized something she hadn't wanted to admit. She wasn't trapped in the same way she had been before. But she wasn't free either. Not really. Because now, her safety depended on someone else's power. And his power came with rules. Unspoken, but very real. Virginia's voice lowered slightly. This isn't temporary, is it? Adrian didn't answer immediately. He didn't need to. The silence said enough. Because decisions like his didn't come with expiration dates. They came with consequences. Long-term ones. Virginia held his gaze. Steady. Unflinching. And somewhere between tension and truth. The realization settled fully. He wasn't letting her go. Not because he couldn't. Because he had chosen not to. And that choice changed everything. Because he said he was protecting her, but it didn't feel like freedom. The tension didn't disappear. It shifted. From sharp to quiet. From confrontation to something harder to define. Virginia stood near the window again, but this time she wasn't watching the city. She was aware of him. Not just his presence. His silence. Adrian Voss stood across the room, jacket removed, sleeves slightly rolled. Less formal, but no less controlled. He wasn't working. He wasn't on the phone. He was still. And for the first time since she had met him, he looked distant. Not detached. Burdened. Virginia noticed it immediately. Because people like him didn't slow down without reason. You've been quiet, she said. Her voice wasn't confrontational. Just observant. Adrian didn't respond right away. He remained where he was, his gaze fixed somewhere beyond the glass, beyond the city, beyond anything visible. Then finally, I usually am. Virginia, tilted her head slightly. No, she said. You're controlled. A pause. This is different. That caught his attention. Not visibly, but enough. Adrian turned his head slightly, his gaze settling on her. You analyze more than you speak, he said. Virginia gave a faint, almost ironic smile. I learned from watching you. A beat. Silence followed. But it wasn't empty. It was softer now, less guarded. Virginia stepped closer, not cautiously, not strategically. Naturally. You're not thinking about them, she said. My family. Adrian didn't answer, which was answer enough. You're thinking about something else, she added. Another pause. Then, you don't stop, she said quietly. Not unless something forces you to. That was the moment something shifted. Because Adrian didn't deflect, didn't redirect, didn't dismiss. Instead, he exhaled slowly and looked away. Not at her, at the floor. Small, subtle, but significant, Virginia noticed. Of course she did. What is it? She asked. Her voice softened, not out of weakness, out of understanding. Adrian's jaw tightened slightly, as if the question itself required effort to answer. Then, loss, he said. One word. Controlled. But heavy. Virginia didn't interrupt, didn't rush him. She just stood there, present. And that presence made it harder for him to retreat. It changes how you move, Adrian continued. How you decide. What you allow. His voice was steady, but something underneath it wasn't. Virginia's expression softened slightly. Someone close to you, she said. Not a question. A recognition. Adrian nodded once. Slowly. Yes. Silence. But not uncomfortable. This time, it held something else. Space. Virginia took another step closer. You built all of this after that, she said, gesturing lightly around the penthouse. The control. The structure. Adrian's gaze lifted to meet hers again. Yes. A pause. Because control prevents loss. Virginia's breath slowed. Because she understood that. More than she expected. And when you don't have control? She asked quietly. Adrian's expression hardened. Just slightly. You lose. Simple. Definitive. Final. Virginia studied him carefully now. Not the billionaire. Not the strategist. The man. And for the first time, she saw it. Not weakness. Not vulnerability in the way most people defined it. But something deeper. Something quieter. A fear that had been turned into discipline. A wound that had been turned into power. That's why you won't let me go, she said softly. Adrian didn't respond immediately. Because he didn't need to. The truth had already settled between them. Virginia took another step closer. Now they stood within reach. Close enough to feel the shift in energy. Close enough for silence to mean something more. You're not just protecting me, she continued. You're preventing another outcome you can't control. Adrian held her gaze. Unmoving. Unblinking. And for the first time, there was no calculation in it. Just honesty. Yes. The word was quiet, but it carried more weight than anything else he had said. Virginia's chest tightened slightly. Not from fear, from understanding. Because now, she wasn't just someone in his space. She was part of something deeper. Something unresolved. That's not sustainable, she said gently. Adrian's expression didn't shift. It doesn't have to be a pause. It just has to work. Virginia shook her head slightly. No, she said. It has to mean something. That landed differently. Because meaning was something control couldn't manufacture. Silence stretched again. But this time, it wasn't tense. It was close. Virginia didn't step back. Neither did he. You're not as untouchable as you make yourself seem, she said. Adrian's gaze remained steady. And you're not as fragile as you let people believe. A faint shift. Not quite a smile. But something close. Something human. Virginia's voice lowered. Maybe that's why we're here. Adrian didn't respond. But he didn't move away either. And that alone said enough. Because distance had always been his instinct. Control his defense. But right now, he wasn't creating space. He was allowing proximity. Something new. Something unplanned. Something real. The city outside remained bright. Unchanged. But inside, everything had shifted. Because for the first time, Virginia wasn't trying to escape. And Adrian wasn't trying to control. They were just standing there, seeing each other, without layers, without masks, without strategy. And in that quiet, fragile moment, Virginia realized something she hadn't expected. The man who controlled everything wasn't empty. He was carrying something, something that shaped every decision he made, every line he drew, every person he let stay. And now, she was one of them, because for the first time, she saw the man behind the control. The interruption came dressed as power. Not loud, not chaotic, controlled, deliberate. Virginia noticed it before the door even opened. The shift in air, the tightening in Adrian's posture. Subtle, but unmistakable. He had been calm moments ago, measured, grounded in that quiet space they had just created. Now, he was alert, focused in a different way. "Someone's here," Virginia said softly. Adrian didn't answer, but he didn't deny it either. A second later, the door opened. No knock this time, which meant only one thing. Authority. A man stepped inside, tall, impeccably dressed, presence sharp enough to cut through the room without raising his voice. Darius Cole. The name didn't need introduction. It carried itself. A high-profile attorney, strategist, and more importantly, connected to the man Virginia had run from. His gaze landed on her immediately. Not surprised, not curious. Certain. "There you are," he said. Virginia's body stilled. Not fear, recognition. Because this wasn't random. This was intentional. Behind her, Adrian stepped forward. Slow, controlled, but different now. "You're not authorized to be here," Adrian said. Darius didn't even look at him at first. His attention stayed on Virginia. "You've caused quite a situation," he said calmly. Virginia's voice remained steady. "I didn't ask anyone to look for me." Darius smiled faintly. "That's not how this works." Now Adrian moved. One step forward. Enough to shift the balance in the room. "She's not going anywhere," he said. Darius finally turned his head slightly, acknowledging him, but not yielding. "That's not your decision," Darius replied. Adrian's expression didn't change. "It is when she's here." Silence. Sharp. Charged. Virginia felt it building between them. Not just disagreement. Territory. Control. Darius took a few steps further into the space, his gaze drifting briefly around the penthouse before returning to Virginia. "You've been misrepresented," he said. "Your family is concerned." Virginia let out a quiet breath. "They're not concerned," she said. "They're controlling." Darius didn't argue that, which said enough. "They filed formal claims," he continued, "including your inability to make stable decisions." Virginia's jaw tightened. "They're lying." Darius shrugged slightly. "Legally, they're positioning." A pause. Effectively, Adrian stepped closer now, close enough that the distance between him and Virginia shifted. Subtly, protectively. "She's not leaving," Adrian repeated. This time, there was something else in his voice. Not just control. Emotion. Darius noticed. Of course he did. "That's interesting," he said, glancing between them. "You're involving yourself personally now." Adrian didn't respond, but he didn't step back either, and that alone confirmed it. Virginia felt the shift immediately, because this wasn't strategy anymore. This was something else. Darius turned fully toward Adrian now. "You understand what this becomes if you continue?" he asked. Adrian's voice stayed low. "Yes." "Then you understand the consequences." "I do. A beat. And you're choosing them anyway?" Adrian didn't hesitate. "Yes." Silence followed, but it wasn't neutral. It was loaded, because choices like that came with cost. Real ones. Darius exhaled slowly, then looked back at Virginia. "You should think carefully," he said. "This situation doesn't end quietly." Virginia met his gaze. "I already made my choice." Another pause. Then something unexpected happened. Darius stepped slightly closer to her. Not threatening, but intentional. "You're underestimating what's coming," he said more quietly. Virginia didn't move. "I'm not afraid of them," she replied. Darius studied her for a moment. Then, he smiled again. But this time, it carried something sharper. "You should be." That was the moment. The exact moment everything changed. Because Virginia felt it. The shift beside her. Not subtle this time. Not controlled. Adrian moved, closing the space instantly, positioning himself between them. Not strategically, instinctively. And his voice when it came, was different. You're done here. No calm calculation. No layer control. Just finality. Darius's eyes flicked to him, not surprised, but noting it. Carefully. You're crossing a line, Darius said. Adrian didn't blink. You already crossed it. Silence. Heavy. Because this wasn't just about Virginia anymore. This was power meeting resistance. And not backing down. Darius adjusted his cuff slightly. Composed. Always composed. Then we'll proceed accordingly, he said. A pause. But understand this. His gaze moved briefly to Virginia again. This isn't over. Then back to Adrian. It's just beginning. He turned, walked toward the door, and stopped just before exiting. One more thing, he added. Neither of them spoke, but both listened. Darius looked at Virginia one last time. Next time, we won't be having a conversation. Then he left. The door closed. Silence returned. But it wasn't the same. Not even close. Because something had been triggered. Virginia stood still for a moment, then slowly turned toward Adrian. He hadn't moved, but his posture, his expression, everything about him was different, less controlled, more exposed. You reacted, she said quietly. Adrian didn't answer immediately. His jaw tightened slightly, his gaze still fixed on the door. You don't do that, Virginia added. That pulled his attention back to her. And yet I did, he said. A pause. The air between them shifted again. Not tension, not distance. Something more complicated. Virginia studied him carefully. You didn't like that he came for me. Adrian's expression hardened. Just enough. No. Another step closer. You didn't like that he spoke to me like that. Adrian's voice dropped. No. Virginia's breath slowed. And you didn't like that he thought he could take me. That one. He didn't answer. But he didn't need to. Because the silence confirmed everything. Virginia held his gaze. Steady. Understanding. And then she said it. Soft. But undeniable. You didn't like the way he looked at me. That landed. Differently. Because this time, Adrian didn't deflect. Didn't redirect. Didn't control it. He just stood there. Looking at her. And for the first time, there was no distance in it. No calculation. No barrier. Just something raw. Something real. Something he hadn't planned to feel. And couldn't ignore anymore. Because he didn't like the way she looked at anyone else. The silence after Darius left didn't settle. It lingered. Heavy. Unresolved. Virginia stood where she was, the sunlight still pouring through the glass. Still bright. Still clear. But everything felt different now. Because something had shifted. Not outside. Inside. And she felt it most in him. Adrian Voss didn't return to his usual rhythm. He didn't pick up his phone. Didn't resume control like nothing had happened. He stayed still, watching the door long after it had closed. As if part of him was still in that moment. Still reacting. Virginia noticed. Of course she did. Because for the first time since she had met him, he wasn't ahead of the situation. He was inside it. You're thinking about what he said, she said. Her voice was calm, measured, but no longer cautious. Adrian didn't respond immediately. Then, I'm thinking about what comes next. Virginia tilted her head slightly. No, she said softly. You already know what comes next. A pause. You're thinking about what you felt. That landed. Adrian turned his head toward her slowly. His expression didn't break, but something behind it shifted. I don't react, he said. Virginia took a step closer. You did. Another step. And you're still doing it. Adrian held her gaze. Unblinking. Unmoving. But not untouched. Because now, she wasn't observing him from a distance. She was stepping into his space. Into his control. And altering it. You stepped in front of me, she continued. Her voice steady. You didn't calculate that. You didn't plan it. A pause. You felt it. Adrian's jaw tightened slightly. But he didn't deny it. And that was the shift. Virginia closed the remaining distance between them. Not aggressive. Not hesitant. Intentional. You don't like losing control, she said. Adrian's voice came low. No. Virginia nodded faintly. I don't either. Silence. But this silence was different. It wasn't tense. It was charged. Alive. Because now, they weren't just reacting to circumstances. They were reacting to each other. Virginia's voice softened slightly. But control isn't the same as strength. Adrian's gaze sharpened. And losing it isn't strength either. Virginia shook her head. No, she said. but knowing when to let go is... That lingered, because it wasn't something he operated on. Letting go meant risk, and risk was something he eliminated. I don't operate that way, Adrian said. Virginia held his gaze. I know, a pause, but you're starting to... That hit, because it wasn't entirely wrong, and he knew it. Adrian stepped closer now, closing the space again, reclaiming it, or trying to. You think you understand what this is, he said. Virginia didn't move. I don't think, she replied. I observe. A beat. And you're changing. Adrian's expression hardened slightly. I adapt. Virginia's lips curved faintly. That's not adaptation. A pause. That's reaction. Silence stretched. Sharp. Because now, the roles were shifting. He wasn't leading the conversation anymore. He was responding to it. Responding to her. Virginia stepped back slightly. Not retreating. Resetting the space. Giving him room to see it. You built everything around control, she said. Your world. Your decisions. Your boundaries. Adrian didn't interrupt. You don't let people in, she continued. You position them. Another pause. But you didn't position me. That one. He felt. Virginia saw it in the way his gaze flickered, just slightly. You reacted to me, she said. A step back. You made decisions around me. Another step. You changed patterns for me. She stopped. Let the silence settle. Then, for someone who doesn't lose control, a faint breath. You're losing it. Adrian exhaled slowly. Not frustration. Not anger. Something deeper. Something harder to contain. You're assuming too much, he said. Virginia shook her head. No, she replied. I'm seeing clearly. A beat. And that's something you respect. Silence. Because she was right. He did. Adrian looked at her differently now. Not as someone to analyze. Not as someone to contain. But as someone who saw through him. And didn't hesitate to say it. That's dangerous, he said quietly. Virginia's expression didn't change. So are you. Another pause. Then she added, but I'm not trying to control you. That line shifted everything. Because it removed something. Pressure. Expectation. Structure. Adrian studied her carefully. And what are you trying to do? He asked. Virginia held his gaze. Understand you. A beat. Without owning you. Silence. Deep. Because that was something he had never operated within. Control or distance. Power or absence. But not this. Not balance. Virginia turned slightly, walking a few steps toward the window. Not to leave the conversation, but to change its angle. To change its weight. You don't need to hold everything so tightly, she said quietly. Adrian watched her. Didn't move. Didn't interrupt. You think if you loosen your grip, everything falls apart, she continued. A pause. But maybe... She glanced back at him. It doesn't. That moment stretched. Longer than expected. Because it wasn't just words. It was possibility. And Adrian, for the first time, didn't dismiss it immediately. Virginia saw it. Felt it. And understood what it meant. Because now, he wasn't just controlling the situation. He was responding to her. To her presence. To her words. To her. And that changed the balance completely. She turned fully back toward him, her voice steady. You're not the only one with power here. Adrian's gaze held hers. Unwavering. But different now. Because he felt it too. The shift. The change. The imbalance. Because for the first time, he wasn't setting the pace. He wasn't controlling the outcome. He wasn't ahead. He was reacting. Adapting. Adjusting. To her. And that was something new. Something unfamiliar. Something he couldn't fully control. Because now, he was the one reacting. Not her. It didn't start with confrontation. It started with distance. The kind that didn't announce itself, but settled quietly between moments. Virginia felt it before she understood it. Adrian hadn't said anything. Hadn't changed anything obvious. But something in him had shifted. Again. Only this time. It wasn't emotional. It was cold. Measured. Pulled back. She noticed it in the way he stood farther away than usual. In the way his responses came slower. Shorter. Controlled in a way that felt deliberate. You're watching me again, Virginia said. Her voice was calm, but direct. Adrian didn't deny it. I never stopped. That answer should have sounded familiar. Normal. But it didn't. Because now, it meant something different. Virginia studied him carefully. This isn't the same, she said. Adrian didn't respond, which confirmed it. A quiet tension filled the room. Different from before. Less alive. More cautious. What happened? She asked. Adrian exhaled slowly, then reached for the tablet resting on the table beside him. He turned it toward her. Not dramatically. Not aggressively. Just intentionally. Virginia stepped closer. Her eyes scanned the screen, and everything inside her stilled. Footage. Clear. Precise. Undeniable. It showed her, earlier that morning, moving through the hallway alone. Her posture different. Her steps confident. Accurate. No hesitation. No blindness. No illusion. Just her, as she really was. Virginia's breath caught. Not visibly, but internally, it hit hard. Because this wasn't an accident. This was placed. Captured. Delivered. "Where did you get this?" she asked quietly. Adrian's voice remained even. "It was sent to me." A pause. Anonymously, Virginia looked at him, and for the first time, she saw it. Not anger. Not confrontation. Doubt. Controlled. But present. "They're trying to turn you against me," she said. Adrian didn't answer immediately, because part of him was considering it. "You said no one knew," he said. Virginia's expression tightened. No one was supposed to. Adrian's gaze sharpened slightly. That's not the same thing. Silence. Because he was right, and they both knew it. Virginia stepped back slightly, her mind moving fast. "This is a setup," she said. "Someone inside your space leaked that." Adrian's tone didn't change. "Or you were never as careful as you claimed." That landed. Sharper than anything else. Virginia held his gaze. "You don't believe that." Adrian didn't respond. And that was worse than disagreement. Because now, there was space for doubt. Virginia shook her head slightly. "No," she said. "You don't get to do that." Adrian's expression hardened. "Do what?" "Pull back without saying it," she replied. "Question me without asking." A pause. "If you think I lied to you, say it." Silence stretched. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Then, "You lied to everyone," Adrian said. The words were calm, but cutting. "That's not the same," Virginia replied. "It is," he said, "just applied differently." Virginia's chest tightened. "Everything I did was to survive," she said. "And everything I do is to control outcomes," Adrian replied. A beat. "So yes, it's the same." That hit deeper than expected. Because now, he wasn't separating her from the situation. He was placing her inside it. As a variable. A risk. Virginia took a step closer. "You know me better than that," she said. Adrian's gaze held hers. "Do I?" That question. It shifted everything. Because for the first time, he wasn't certain. And uncertainty, for someone like him, was dangerous. Virginia's voice lowered. "You think I would manipulate you like that?" Adrian didn't answer. But the silence, the hesitation, said enough. Virginia exhaled slowly, hurt flickering beneath control. "Someone is playing a game here," she said, "and you're letting them." Adrian's tone stayed even. "I don't ignore evidence. And I don't betray people who are protecting me," she shot back. That landed. Because now, it wasn't just about the footage. It was about trust, and whether it existed at all. Silence filled the room again. But this time, it wasn't tension. It was fracture. Adrian turned slightly away, his gaze shifting back to the screen. Analyzing, replaying, reconsidering. Virginia watched him, and felt it clearly. That shift, that space, that distance. Someone had gotten close enough to break something. Not fully, but enough. "Who else has seen that?" she asked. Adrian didn't look at her. "Only me." A pause. "For now." Virginia's jaw tightened. "They're trying to isolate me," she said. "Make me look unstable, untrustworthy." Adrian didn't disagree, but he didn't confirm it either. And that uncertainty, was the real damage. Virginia took a step back now, not retreating, protecting herself, because she understood something in that moment. The danger wasn't just outside anymore. It had entered his mind, and that was harder to fight. "You said you knew enough," she said quietly. Adrian didn't respond. Virginia held his gaze one last time. Steady, unshaken. "But now you're not sure," she added. A pause. "And that changes everything." Adrian finally looked at her again. But this time, his expression wasn't clear. Not controlled, not certain, just conflicted. And that was new, because doubt didn't belong in his world. And yet, there it was, placed, growing, unavoidable. Virginia turned slightly, her voice softer now. Not weak, but aware. They want you to question me, she said. A beat. And it's working. Silence answered her, because neither of them could deny it anymore. Something had been broken. Not fully, not beyond repair, but enough to change the balance. Enough to create distance. Enough to make trust uncertain. And for the first time, Adrian Voss wasn't sure what to believe. Because for the first time, he wasn't sure if he could trust her. Hope you are enjoying the story till now. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you will not miss our next story. Also, like, share, and comment where you are watching us from. The silence didn't fade. It sharpened. What had been tension before was now fracture. Virginia stood near the center of the room, her posture steady, her breathing controlled, but everything inside her was tightening. Across from her, Adrian Voss remained still, tablet in hand, evidence between them, doubt filling the space, and neither of them moved to close it. You're still thinking about it, Virginia said. Her voice was calm, too calm. Adrian didn't look up. I don't ignore facts. Virginia exhaled slowly. That's not a fact, she said. That's a setup. Adrian's gaze finally lifted to meet hers. And yet it exists. That was the problem, not the truth. The existence. Something real enough to question everything. Virginia took a step closer. You think I would risk everything just to deceive you? She asked. Adrian didn't answer. And that silence. It cut deeper than accusation. Virginia's chest tightened. Say it, she said. A beat. If you think I'm lying, say it. Adrian's jaw tightened slightly. I think, he said slowly, that you're capable of more than you admit. That landed harder than expected. Not because it was entirely wrong, but because of what it implied. You don't trust me, Virginia said. Adrian didn't respond immediately. Then, I don't fully understand you. That's not the same thing, she shot back. It is when the stakes are this high. Silence. Heavy. Pressing. Because now, they weren't navigating tension. They were colliding. Virginia took another step forward. You brought me here, she said. You chose to protect me. A pause. You said you knew enough. Adrian's expression hardened slightly. I did. And now, she pressed. Adrian didn't answer. Because now, he wasn't sure. And that uncertainty was breaking everything. Virginia shook her head faintly. No, she said. You don't get to rewrite this. Adrian stepped forward, closing the distance. You think this is about rewriting? He asked. His voice was lower now, controlled, but strained beneath the surface. This is about risk. A beat. You're a risk. That did it. Virginia's composure cracked, just slightly. I was always a risk, she said. That didn't stop you before. Adrian's gaze didn't waver. I had more certainty before. And now you don't, she challenged. Silence. Because he didn't. And they both knew it. Virginia laughed softly, not amused, disbelieving. So one video, she said, one piece of manipulated evidence. And suddenly everything I've shown you doesn't matter? Adrian's voice sharpened. It matters. Then act like it, she snapped. That echoed, louder than anything else. Because now, the restraint was slipping. Adrian stepped even closer. Close enough that the air between them felt charged. You expect me to ignore something like that? He asked. Virginia didn't back down. I expect you to know me better than that. Silence. Long. Unforgiving. Because that was the breaking point. Not the video. Not the situation. Trust. And whether it had ever fully existed. Adrian's voice dropped slightly. You lied from the beginning. Virginia's eyes flashed. To survive. That doesn't change the fact that you lied. That doesn't make me your enemy, she fired back. Another pause. Sharp. Dangerous. Because now, they were no longer aligned. They were opposing. Virginia stepped back, creating space. Not out of fear. Out of clarity. If you think I'm manipulating you, she said, her voice steady again, then this doesn't work. Adrian's expression tightened. Walking away doesn't solve anything. No, she said, but staying where I'm not trusted destroys everything. That hit, because it was true, and truth was harder to control than anything else. Adrian looked at her, really looked at her, not analyzing, not calculating, seeing, and what he saw was someone ready to leave. Not because she wanted to, because she had to. If you walk out that door, he said slowly, you know what happens. Virginia held his gaze. I know. A beat. They'll come for me, and I won't be there to stop it. Another pause. And you won't be there to question me either, she replied. Silence. Because now, it wasn't just about danger. It was about choice. Virginia took a step toward the door. Not rushing. Not dramatic. Just moving. And that movement, that simple shift, changed everything. Adrian's body reacted before his mind did. One step forward. Instinct. Stop. The word came out sharper than he intended. Virginia paused, but didn't turn around. You don't trust me, she said quietly. Adrian's voice lowered. That's not what I said. It's what you showed. A pause. And that's enough. She took another step, closer to the door, closer to leaving, closer to something neither of them could undo. Adrian felt it then. Not control, not calculation. Loss. The same kind he had built his entire world trying to prevent. And now, it was happening again, right in front of him. If you go, he said, his voice tighter now, this doesn't reset. Virginia's hand hovered near the door. I know. A beat. This ends. Silence. Because that was the truth. Not temporary. Not reversible. Final. Adrian stood there, watching her. And for the first time, he didn't know how to control the outcome. Didn't know how to fix it. Didn't know how to stop it. Without losing something else. Something deeper. Something he hadn't planned to feel. Virginia turned her head slightly. Not fully. Just enough. You have to decide, she said. A pause. Trust me, or lose me. The words settled into the space between them. Heavy, unavoidable, and final. Because if he made the wrong choice now, there would be no second chance. No recovery. No control left to regain. Just absence. And the weight of it. Because if he let her go now, he might never recover from it. The moment stretched. Fragile. Unstable. Virginia's hand hovered inches from the door. Freedom. Risk. Everything waiting on the other side. Behind her, Adrian Voss didn't move. But the air around him shifted. Not controlled anymore. Not calculated. This was something else. Something raw. You have to decide, Virginia had said. And now, the decision was no longer theoretical. It was happening. Right now. Adrian's gaze locked onto her. Not analyzing. Not measuring. Holding. As if letting her walk away would fracture something he wouldn't be able to rebuild. Virginia. Her name left his mouth differently this time. Not as observation. Not as control. As something personal. She didn't turn. But she didn't move forward either. A pause. Heavy. Breathing space into a moment that had no room left. I don't trust the situation, Adrian said. His voice was low. Measured, but strained. But I don't believe you would betray me. Virginia's fingers tightened slightly against the door handle. That was the closest thing to truth he had given her since everything broke. Then act like it, she said quietly. Silence. Then, Adrian moved. One step. Two. Until he was close enough that the distance between them didn't feel like escape anymore. It felt like a line, and he had just crossed it. You're not leaving, he said. Not cold. Not commanding. Certain. Virginia turned slowly this time. Her eyes met his. And if I choose to, she asked. Adrian held her gaze. Then I stop you. The words weren't loud, but they landed heavily. Because this was no longer protection dressed as choice. This was decision. Virginia searched his expression. And what does that make this? She asked. Protection or control? Adrian didn't hesitate. Both. The honesty in that answer hit harder than anything else. Because now, there were no illusions left. No softened edges. Just truth. And consequences. Before Virginia could respond, the sound came. Sharp. Sudden. Unavoidable. A knock. Louder than before. More force behind it. Both of them turned. At the same time. And this time, there was no mistaking it. This wasn't a request. It was arrival. Adrian's expression shifted instantly. Back to control. But different now. Colder. More dangerous. They're here, Virginia said. Adrian didn't answer. He didn't need to. The second knock came harder, followed by a voice. Mr. Voss, open the door. Official, authoritative, backed by something more than presence. Virginia's chest tightened. They brought enforcement, she said. Adrian's gaze didn't leave the door. Yes. A pause. Then, they escalated. The third knock came. Sharper, more aggressive. They have legal authorization to enter, the voice continued. We advise cooperation. Virginia took a step back from the door instinctively, her pulse rising, her mind racing. They're not going to leave without me, she said. Adrian finally turned to her, and in that moment, she saw it. Not hesitation, not doubt, decision. They're not taking you, he said. Virginia shook her head slightly. You don't know that. I do. His voice didn't waver, and that certainty, it grounded something inside her, even as everything outside threatened to collapse. Another knock. Harder. Mr. Voss, this is your final notice. Silence followed, but it wasn't empty. It was loaded, because now, the next move would define everything. Virginia looked at him carefully. If you stand against them, she said, this doesn't stay legal. Adrian's expression didn't change. It already isn't. A beat. They crossed that line when they came here. Virginia's breath slowed. You could walk away, she said. Let them take me. Adrian stepped closer, closing the distance completely now. No. Simple. Final. Irreversible. The force in his answer made something shift inside her. Because this wasn't strategy anymore. This wasn't calculation. This was choice. And he had made it. Another voice joined from outside. Lower. Familiar. Darius Cole. We're done negotiating. Adrian, he said through the door. Open it. The air tightened. Pressure building from both sides. Inside, a decision. Outside, a force ready to break through. Virginia's voice dropped slightly. If you do this, there's no going back. Adrian's gaze locked onto hers. I'm aware. A pause. Then he reached past her. Not to move her. Not to push her aside. But to lock the door. The sound echoed. Final. Decisive. And everything changed. Because that one action, that single choice, shifted the entire situation. From legal pressure to open conflict. Virginia stared at him. You just made this worse. Adrian didn't look away. I just made it clear. Another heavy silence filled the space. The voices outside grew sharper. More urgent. More forceful. But inside, everything slowed. Because now, there was no uncertainty left. No middle ground. No safe exit. Virginia's fate wasn't just about escape anymore. It wasn't just about survival. It had evolved into something bigger, more dangerous, more personal, because now it involved power, control, and someone willing to fight for her, no matter the cost. Virginia's voice softened slightly. Not weak, but aware. This isn't just about me anymore. Adrian's response was immediate. It never was. A beat, and in that moment, she understood. This wasn't just protection. This wasn't just control. This was something deeper, something that had grown beyond both of them, something neither of them could fully stop now. The noise outside intensified, the pressure rising, the situation escalating beyond recovery. And inside, they stood there, facing each other, on the edge of something irreversible. Because whatever came next, it wouldn't just decide what happened. It would decide everything. Power, freedom, control, and who held it. Because whatever came next would decide who owned her future. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed the story. For those who haven't watched part 1, click on the video at your top right side to watch. Subscribe, like, share, and comment which was your best part. Take care, and see you all in our next story.